A very warm welcome to the Art Vlog Art Lovers, where I'm on the terrace at the back of Somerset House overlooking the river, waiting with anticipation to go into the new show here that is displaying works by that master of the London School, Frank Auerbach, specifically his Charcoal Head series. Auerbach was born in 1931 in Berlin. He escaped the clutches of Nazi Germany around the time of the Kindertransport in 1939, arriving in London as a 7-year-old. Tragically, his parents were killed in Auschwitz in 1942, and he had to make a new life for himself here in this city. He studied at Central St Martin's and the Royal College of Art, but probably the training that had the most influence on his life was that at Borough Polytechnic just across the river, where he was taught along with Leon Kossoff by that master David Blomberg. Auerbach has gone on to become one of our greatest living artists. He's 92 as I record this, and became a seminal part of the London School along with Lucian Freud, Francis Bacon and Kossoff himself. But in the late 50s and early 60s, starting I think in 1956, he produced a series of legendary, I think it's fair to say, portrait heads made of charcoal and chalk. And that's what this show is promising to bring together today. As far as I'm aware, there are 17 charcoal heads, plus several other paintings as well from Auerbach. I've been looking forward to this show since it was announced. The last time I brought you Auerbach, it was paintings that he made during the COVID pandemic in his very later years. So this is going to be really interesting to go back to the start of his artistic career, because if you think about it, he had his first solo show in London in 1956, and these charcoal heads produced of people who he knew and who he was intimate with in some way as friendship, family or lovers, and are going to be very, very different. This is the first time that these works have been brought together in a single showing since they were made. I've not seen many of them myself, so it's going to be really exciting to see them all as a collection. So come and join me as we come inside the Courtauld to investigate these works by legend Frank Auerbach. The show is an intimate show in just 2 galleries on the top floor of the Courtauld Gallery building. Leon Kossoff was a close friend of Auerbach. Both had experienced the impact of flight from persecution, Auerbach himself and Kossoff through his parents who came to the UK from Ukraine. Both were hugely influenced by David Blomberg's teaching at Borough Polytechnic. Kossoff often used charcoal, and these drawings capture perhaps the uncertainty Kossoff felt about his own talents while sitting for Auerbach. They would sit for each other. This painting, which you can see here, has been reworked almost to the point of destruction, something we'll see again and again in this show. It's possible to believe that these works were produced spontaneously with sweeping lines, but the rework and the state of the paper tells us of the struggle Auerbach endured to get each portrait to a stage where he could set it free. The exhibition contains all 3 charcoal works completed by Auerbach of Leon Kossoff, as well as this oil painting, which reminds us of the similarity between Auerbach and Kossoff's styles. A Stella Olive West, known to Auerbach in his works as EOW, is the subject who has the most charcoal heads dedicated to them. Auerbach produced 10 in all. Stella was a widow of in her early 30s with 3 children, and Auerbach was only 17 when they met, acting in a play by Peter Ustinov. She became his principal model over the next 2 and a bit decades. A romantic relationship developed, and he moved into the boarding house that she ran in Earl's Court and painted her 3 times a week. Stella said, "Before I started sitting, I used to put a joint in the oven, and the kids were all told to be very quiet. I would sit for an hour, and in the break I rushed downstairs to have a look at the joint. Then I would come back for another hour." We get to see 3 paintings and 6 charcoal heads. The process for production was often torturous. These early works would sometimes take hundreds of sittings to complete. Stella said it was quite an ordeal, because he would spend hours on something, and the next time he came down he would scrape the whole thing down. or in the case of the charcoal heads, rub it out. Stella added, "That used to upset me terribly. I wondered what I was doing it all for." These works, the torn paper, the scuffs, suggest a battle, a fight. Yet, unlike many charcoal works by other artists, they are very much finished works. Battle scarred, yes, a bit like the London Auerbach was painting in, but satisfying and whole. The cuts and repairs you see here give a whole new texture to the work, and they have to be seen to be really experienced, and they draw you in. The relationship between Auerbach and Stella was tempestuous. Auerbach has been quoted as saying, "Stella was not averse to a fight, I mean a physical fight." And Stella has confessed that the violence would have been more from me. I used to get so angry. I was very theatrical. And you can't help but feel that some of the violence spills over into these works. His relationship with Stella came to an abrupt end long after these drawings and paintings in this show were produced. In 1973, after a particularly violent row, Stella threw a bottle of vodka at him and shouted, "Never come back." We end our view of Stella with this work, the most colourful by far in the show. After receiving a £1,500 annuity from the Beaux Arts Gallery, Auerbach was finally able to afford brighter paints, cadmium and chromium paints, and so we see torrents of aquamarine and cadmium red in this final work. Auerbach produced two charcoal heads of his wife and the mother of his son, Julia. They married in 1958, but split up roughly 2 years later, partially because Stella was very much back on the scene. The second work, which you can see here, includes an electrifying strike of pink, which was added at the end of the process. On many of the works, the date can be seen scrubbed out and then re-recorded, such was the time it took to produce the work. Julia and Auerbach reunited in 1976. Helen Gillespie is very much the odd one out in the sense that she was a friend of Stella West and not that well known to Auerbach. But this is significant because it was one of the last charcoal heads of his early career. Contrastingly, Gerda Bohm was a crucial presence in Auerbach's life. She was a much older cousin who Auerbach stayed with in the holidays from boarding school as he struggled to adapt to a new life in the UK. She herself had fled persecution from the Nazis and settled in London. The nature of the charcoal heads, the time they took to produce, and the constant reworking gives them a depth that seems to freeze the sitter in time. We get a sense of deep melancholy in Boehm's pose. We sense a dignified woman who's lived through much upheaval. All great portraits are able to freeze time and produce works of a tremendous emotional depth, but the charcoal adds something, allowing both fine lines from the sharper edge of the charcoal, but also soft texture which allows expression of emotional complexity. We see a fascinating work that began in charcoal, but then saw the artist switch to oils. The charcoal base allows freedom for Auerbach to begin to experiment. Bohm began sitting for Auerbach in 1961 and continued to do so weekly for the next 20 years. All three of the charcoal heads that Auerbach produced of his cousin are on show here, and it's a really special moment to see these works brought back together for the first time. Auerbach made two self-portraits in charcoal. He drew them in his Camden Town studio, and this 1958 portrait is simply astonishing. The intensity of the creative process sees the work patched up 3 times, and it's a testament to his obsession for perfection that characterizes him as an artist. Auerbach was 27 when he produced it, and it's a clear masterpiece. He only made 3 self-portraits in this early period. The 2 here you can see in charcoal, and 1 in oil. He didn't return to self-portraiture until his 70s, when he said that his face was much, much more interesting, and he returned with spectacular effect. I do recommend you look at my video on Frank Auerbach's later portraits. Well, I hope you enjoyed that exploration there of Frank Auerbach's charcoal heads from here at the Courtauld Gallery at Somerset House. It did make me chuckle because there's a cute festival going on in one of the wings of Somerset House, and the idea of there being a cute festival and then the brooding intensity of Auerbach's charcoal heads in the same gallery was quite a nice juxtaposition. But anyway, I really enjoyed this show. And I thought it was a brilliant opportunity to see what I consider to be some of Auerbach's greatest works, some of his masterpieces. I actually aesthetically prefer them to his paintings, although some of you might disagree with that. And it was great to see paintings there because it kind of basically mixed the show up a bit and showed what he was working on at the same time. In terms of the charcoal heads, there was a tension between the wanting to lean in as close as possible, see the reworking, see some of the dabbling and the changing and the ghosts of previous attempts. And on the other hand, a step back, because there's no doubt, as I said in my narration, these are works frozen in time, and he almost captures time because it took so long for the sitters to actually reach a point where Auerbach was satisfied with the work. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it was a unique opportunity to see all of these charcoal heads put together. I thought it was fantastic in terms of the way that they were curated and collated together. So many of them are private collections that we're not going to be able to see lots of these works again unless they're sold. So although some of them are in public galleries as well, lots of them weren't. And so yeah, for me this is a really, really interesting chance to see some of Auerbach's greatest works in one place. I would give this, drum roll, an 8 out of 10. I really recommend it. I think that £14 is really good value, considering that you also get access to the Courtauld Gallery's wonderful collection, and do make the most of that as well. I'm sometimes guilty of just going in for the show, but I did today spend a little bit of time with the post-impressionist, impressionist masterpieces on the top floor. The show's on until the 27th of May. Don't forget to get out. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested and you enjoyed this show, don't forget to check out the video, which I'm going to put in a link here, about Frank Auerbach's much later self-portraits. It's a really great show. You can't see anymore, but I've captured it for you on the art vlog. Don't forget to subscribe to the art vlog, hit that notification bell, and most importantly of all, get out there and explore the wonderfully rich UK art scene.